Welcome to the Health Coach Nation podcast. My name is Hailey Rowe, and I'm a sales and marketing coach and LinkedIn lead generation service provider. I work with health, life, and mindset coaches and online service-based business owners to help them get more sales, shift their time to the client-generating activities instead of just the busy work, and overcome that social media overwhelm. Let's get into the show. If you've been working at your coaching business for a while, you might have found out by now that it's not as easy as you thought to get clients. If that is you, I want to invite you to check out my free workshop sharing how to go from crickets to clients, creating a freebie funnel formula. So in the series, I share with you how to make a freebie that people actually want, that they actually opt into, so that you can grow your email list, so that you always have an audience to share your offers with. And you always have an audience where they are being nurtured by you, they're moving through the sales cycle, and you're not stuck every time you have a launch feeling like you have zero eyeballs on your content. So if that has been you, if you've been stuck in that and you know you need a bigger audience, you know you need to nurture your audience, go to haileyrowe.com/live event, all one word, to get the free series and get started. So if you are a coach or an entrepreneur, one of the things that you know is you're going to have to market your message. And many people get very overwhelmed about deciding on their niche, deciding their message, wondering if it's too broad or too specific. And I have a free message and niche mastery cheat sheet and class at haileyrowe.com if you want to check it out. But one of the things I wanted to talk about in this video today is how to look into your message confusion and see if it's really relevant or see if you're just distracting yourself. Because what I see a lot of people doing is they get scared about the actual marketing piece, or they want to avoid that part, and they tend to use the messaging piece as almost like a way to distract them and kind of feel still safe and cozy because they're still in the message phase, and so they don't have to do as much marketing. They don't have to start putting themselves out there as much because they're just working on their foundations and their message, but they spend so much time on it that they're missing all the other steps that come after that, and they never end up deciding. So if you're bouncing around, here's a couple things to think about. You want a niche that has purchasing power. You want a niche that, and just so you know, there will be people in every niche that do not have purchasing power. So don't overthink that, meaning, if you're picking teachers, yes, there will be teachers who can't afford your services, but there will be several who do because they either have a partner who could pay for it or they've put aside savings or whatever. But what I'm saying is don't pick one that's specifically extremely, very obviously hard, like teenagers. They don't usually have a job, right? Or picking the niche of unemployed people or picking the niche of, people who are on food stamps and things like that. So making sure that you're picking a niche that's not very obviously going to be challenging when it comes to purchasing power, and picking a niche that has a problem or goal or dream outcome that would be something they want to solve, but not so deep that they need therapy or they need, they wouldn't even be looking for a coach. So for example, somebody who's depressed probably is not going to be looking for a personal development coach if that's what you do, right? So you need to find a problem that's, yes, they may have, certain challenges or frustrations, but they're not so depressed or clinically having something going on where they need a therapist or something like that. And then you want your message to be something, or your niche to be someone who's findable, right? So don't tell yourself that your niche is just every woman, because then you'll be so overwhelmed about where to market, because you could literally market everywhere, right? And you'd have no search ideas for LinkedIn. You'd have no search ideas for Instagram. You'd have no idea what podcast you should be on, things like that. So those are just a couple things to consider. But then also with the messaging itself, there's kind of two different angles you can take. There's having a very specific message, like, I help you lose the last 10 pounds after having a baby within 90 days or whatever. And then there's more of like a broad message, like what I say, which is I help you book clients, get clear on your compelling offers, and grow your audience online and locally. right? Those are kind of 3 big goals, but it has worked for me because I have a framework, my Fast Way framework, that allows me to explain what I do in a way that's clear, in a way that's tangible. I go through it with people on a discovery call to make sure they're a fit and kind of explain the different things I work on with clients. It stands for followers, action, sales, time management, and transformation. And then I talk within each part what we would be doing together, how the process would work. So as you can see, I'm a little able to be a little more broad and not just say, I only help you book your next 3 clients and that's all I do, because I have a framework that allows me to connect the dots for people so they still see my coaching as tangible and I still am able to explain it clearly. So my point, if you're listening to this, if you've been indecisive, is you have to decide something, number one, and you can decide a very clear, specific problem or something a little more broad, as long as you have a good way to explain it to people and a methodology or a framework or phases or steps that you go through with clients that allows them to see what's possible. And you have to then decide and test it and go all in on it. And where people get tripped up is they're having FOMO, like, am I picking the wrong one? I will be stuck to this niche for the rest of my life. I just keep going back and forth. You're giving off wishy-washy energy when you're starting to talk to that niche because you still feel like you should be doing something else. That's where the problems come in. So you have to decide and go all in on one message, and it may or may not be what you stick with for the rest of your life, but the only way you're going to move forward and find out and actually gain some coaching experience is if you decide. And yes, you can use a criteria to decide. Like I mentioned, you could do a little market research, or you could use some of the criteria points that I mentioned to you. But if you're using your message or your niche and that, choice as something that you are still dwelling on after coming up with some ideas, then we have to ask, where's the resistance coming from? Where's the indecision coming from? What are you afraid of? What are you resisting? What are you worried about with this message? And dig specifically into that so that you're not letting the distraction of, I got to decide my niche and message and I can't decide, and I'm still 6 months later still thinking about all my different options. You're not letting that stop you from getting into marketing, because the sooner, we all know marketing requires touch points, marketing requires volume, and marketing requires starting yesterday because it takes time to build trust. And if I could go back to starting to build an audience back when I was still in my certification programs, before I had even graduated, I would have done that. Because if you just graduate and you're ready to get clients all of a sudden and you have 0 audience, well, that's going to be tricky. You got to, there are ways to jumpstart things, but the sooner you can start, the less stress that's going to be on you. So that's the message I want to share with you today, is if you're staying stuck on your message and your niche, the further you're pushing out progress. So you need to decide, even if it deep down in your mind, your brain keeps going back and forth and telling you it's the wrong thing. That's just your brain having FOMO. And that's a pretty normal, natural response. But instead, we have to move forward. We have to really hone that message and allow it to evolve and grow over time, but decide on something you can use for now and run with it. So with this client of mine who has sorry, I was getting a phone call, so I hope that the video is still playing. I have mentioned to her, because she's decided now on a specific message, and we're rolling with it for the end of the year, and we're launching her Black Friday offer with it. But she still has that inner voice that's like, but what if I could be doing these other things? And should I go back to this message? And it's just her brain's way of trying to kind of distract her from the stuff at hand that she needs to be doing for marketing. And we discussed that, and she, is able to work through that because now she has somebody helping her see some blind spots, right? But that is just something that's really common, and I see it all the time. So ask yourself, is the reason you're staying in doubt and confusion about your message because your actual message is really bad? Or is the reason because you're scared of moving forward with it, and fear of rejection and fear of it not working and all of that, and you're afraid to test it? You're afraid to go into the unknown. And so now your brain just wants to keep distracting you in this phase to not move on to the next phase. And if you need to work through that, if that's a mindset block you have, well, two things. Number one, like I said, get the free message and niche cheat sheet at HaileyRowe.com. But also feel free to reach out, and I coach clients on this, and it's not a one-size-fits-all, meaning I have clients who have very, very specific niches, and I have some clients who start out locally. They're a little more broad. They start to hone their message as they work with people and get feedback, and it can go both ways. So I never thought when I first started that, my message would still be pretty much almost the same as when I started. It has expanded. My niche has expanded throughout the years, but for the most part, the types of goals I help with are pretty much the same. And I think it's because I've just been able to stick with it, really hone, listen to my audience and keep kind of providing that. So if you have any questions, let me know, and I'll talk to you guys soon.
Thanks so much for listening to this podcast. And if it's really helpful for you, I'd really appreciate if you share it and or leave a written podcast review. This tells the podcast sites that our show is useful and it will be promoted to more people that way. Thanks again.